Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Donald Trump issued a new executive order Monday temporarily banning all refugees as well as people from 6 majority Muslim countries from entering the United States. According to White House officials, Trump signed the executive order out of public view, a sharp departure from the way he signed his first travel ban order, which caused nationwide protests at airports before being blocked by the courts last month. The new ban applies to people from Syria, Sudan, Iran, Somalia, Libya, and Yemen, but not those from Iraq. The ban will not apply to people from the 6 countries with green cards or who already have a visa. Despite the changes, immigration advocates say the new ban still discriminates against Muslims. This is Nahad Awad from the Council on American Islamic Relations.
This administration is actively working to undercut religious liberties and the freedom of American Muslims, despite constitutional protections that guarantee freedom of religion to all.
The new ban is set to take effect March 16th. We'll have more after headlines with Faiza Patel. Israel passed its own travel ban Monday, barring supporters of the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement known as BDS from entering Israel. The BDS movement's an international campaign to pressure Israel to comply with international law and respect Palestinian rights. The Israeli parliament voted to ban non-Israelis from entering the country if they or any organizations they're a part of support the boycott. The law also calls the BDS movement a, quote, new front of war against Israel, unquote. House Republicans unveiled legislation to repeal much of the Affordable Care Act Monday, including its expansion of Medicaid. The proposal includes a large tax break for insurance companies that pay their CEOs over $500,000 per year. It also defunds Planned Parenthood and eliminates abortion coverage. The Republican proposal does retain Obamacare's requirement that insurers cover people with pre-existing conditions. However, it scraps the revenue-generating mechanism that makes this possible, the individual mandate, which required all Americans to sign up for health insurance or pay a fee. The proposal now goes to 2 House committees for review. Republican lawmakers have been facing increasing resistance from their own constituents over their vows to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Last week, thousands confronted Republicans at town hall meetings, including a meeting with South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham.
Here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to replace Obamacare. Employers, Affordable Health Care Act. Employers are eventually going to drop coverage, and everybody that worked for a company is going to go into a state exchange. We're down to one company. One company. You'll have no choice. Premiums went up 27. I tell you what, you're going to get kicked out in about 30 seconds if you don't shut up.
Because I'm calling Trump.
We'll have more on the Republicans' plan to repeal parts of the Affordable Care Act later in the broadcast. In a setback for the transgender rights movement, the U.S. Supreme Court has announced it's sending a landmark transgender case back to a lower court. The suit was brought by Virginia transgender high school student Gavin Grimm, who sued his local school district over its policy forcing him to use a separate single-stall restroom that no other student was required to use. In a one-sentence order, the Supreme Court vacated an appeals court decision that had ruled in Grimm's favor. The ruling comes less than 2 weeks after President Trump rescinded President Obama's directive telling public schools to let transgender students use the bathrooms matching their gender identity. We'll have more on the Supreme Court decision later in the broadcast with Gavin Grimm himself, as well as Chase Strangio of the ACLU. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development Ben Carson sparked outrage Monday when he described enslaved Africans as immigrants.
That's what America is about. A land of dreams and opportunity. There were other immigrants who came here in the bottom of slave ships, worked even longer, even harder for less. But they too had a dream that one day their sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, great-grandsons, great-granddaughters might pursue prosperity and happiness in this land.
Dr. Carson's comments drew widespread criticism. The NAACP tweeted out simply, immigrants? Award-winning director Ava DuVernay tweeted, quote, their dream? Not be kidnapped, tortured, raped, forced to mate work for another's gain, torn from family and culture, she tweeted. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer has now refused to hold a televised White House press briefing for 7 straight days. On Monday, there was no way for the public to watch Spicer's press conference, where he addressed Trump's unsubstantiated claims that President Obama had Trump's phones tapped during the 2016 election. At the briefing, Spicer offered no evidence but said, quote, "There's no question something happened. The question is it surveillance? Is it a wiretap or whatever?" unquote. In Toronto, organizers have canceled an event after learning that Carson, the father of a Muslim U.S. soldier who was killed in Iraq, was reportedly told his travel privileges are being reviewed. The event had been scheduled to take place today. The Gold Star father and his wife, Ghazala Khan, were verbally attacked by then-Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump over the summer after the Khans took to the stage at the Democratic National Convention, where Khizr Khan addressed Trump directly.
Donald Trump, you're asking Americans to trust you with their future. Let me ask you, have you even read the United States Constitution? I will gladly lend you my copy.
After Khizr Khan's speech, Trump made fun of Ghazala Khan, his wife, suggesting she hadn't spoken on stage because she wasn't allowed to. Khan has lived in the United States since 1980, and both he and his wife are U.S. citizens. It's not known which of his travel privileges are under review. Their son, U.S. Army Captain Humayun Khan, was posthumously awarded the Bronze Star and Purple Heart after he was killed in Iraq in 2004. Planned Parenthood has rejected a proposal by President Trump under which the federal government would stop threatening to defund the Women's Health Organization if Planned Parenthood stops providing abortions. In response, Dawn Laguns of the Planned Parenthood Federation of America said, quote, "Let's be clear, federal funds already do not pay for abortions. Offering money to Planned Parenthood to abandon our patients and our values is not a deal that we will ever accept. Providing critical health care services for millions of American women is not negotiable," unquote. An Afghan couple and their 3 young children have been released after being detained at the Los Angeles airport Thursday and held in custody over the weekend, despite having valid visas to enter the United States. The family all arrived with special immigrant visas, which they'd received because the father had worked for the U.S. government in Afghanistan. They were released just before a scheduled hearing Monday. This is the family's lawyer, Mark Rosenbaum.
This is happening way too often. This is a recruitment anti-poster to say to individuals in Afghanistan, in other nations where we count upon nationals to our system military, that if you do it for a decade and then you come to the United States with your wife and 3 children, the response is going to be, we're going to put you incommunicado for 40 hours. We're going to label you terrorists. That is not in the national interest.
On Monday, the White House issued a statement on ExxonMobil that includes an entire paragraph lifted from an ExxonMobil press release issued less than an hour before. The paragraph, which celebrates ExxonMobil's investments in new oil refineries and chemical manufacturing projects, was first noticed by a Washington Post reporter who posted the side-by-side comparison on Twitter. The ExxonMobil press release was issued at 3:10 p.m., and the White House statement was sent to reporters at 3:44 p.m. Besides small copy editing changes, the paragraphs differ by only 1 word. The ExxonMobil release calls its project the Growing the Gulf Expansion Program, while the White House statement calls it the Growing the Gulf Program. The final sentence of the White House statement is also nearly identical to one in the ExxonMobil release, which claims the projects will create many more jobs. Longtime ExxonMobil CEO Rex Tillerson is now the Secretary of State. The Pentagon has opened an investigation into an invite-only Facebook group where male Marines have been posting thousands of naked or sexually suggestive photos of their fellow female Marines, along with a barrage of misogynistic comments, including some saying the women should be raped. Some of the photos were clearly shot without the consent or knowledge of the women, such as a photo of a corporal bent over. Others are private photos or photos taken off social media sites such as Instagram. The invite-only group is called Marines United and includes 30,000 men who are active duty and veteran soldiers. The Naval Criminal Investigation Service, the NCIS, has launched an investigation, and the Marine Corps has warned soldiers they could face court-martial by participating in the group. A 2014 Pentagon report found the Marines have the highest rate of sexual assault of the U.S. Armed Forces, with an estimated 8% of active duty female Marines experiencing sexual assault in 2014 alone. Dozens of schools have answered they'll be closing Wednesday for the nationwide Day Without a Woman strike on International Women's Day. The entire public school system of Alexandria, Virginia, has announced its closing after 300 women requested they off to participate in the strike. Schools are also closing in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and in New York City. The Day Without a Woman strike was called by the organizers of the Women's March on Washington, the largest nationwide day of protest after an inauguration in U.S. history. And internationally, women's protests marking the upcoming International Women's Day have already begun. On Sunday, thousands of women took to the streets of Warsaw and other Polish cities to protest government plans to even further restrict abortion access. Meanwhile, thousands of women also marched in London, where human rights activist Bianca Jagger denounced President Trump.
So I'm calling today for equal pay, for gender equality, for end of violence against women and girls, and I'm calling as well for us to think about what we are facing with a president in the U.S. who wants to belittle women, who wants to reduce our rights, who wants to diminish us, and that we should stand up.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.